Imagine a world where only those who are willing to challenge their own limits, to face discomfort head-on, and to embrace their shadows, rise to greatness. It is not the safe and comfortable who become exceptional. It is those who are willing to look foolish, to struggle, to fall, and rise again. Greatness is not a gentle journey. It is a rugged road where chaos, pain, and risk are the stepping stones to true transformation. True intelligence is not the ability to accumulate facts or recite knowledge from memory. It is not the performance of cleverness or the mere agility of the mind. True intelligence is something far deeper, far more dangerous, and far more transformative. It involves a confrontation with the shadow, the hidden, unconscious parts of oneself that society, upbringing, and personal fears have driven into darkness. To be genuinely intelligent, one must recognize that within the self lies both light and darkness, creation and destruction, nobility and depravity. Intelligence is not sanitized goodness. It is the courage to gaze unflinchingly into the abyss of one's own capacity for chaos and evil. It is the acceptance that within every admirable trait there is a hidden cost, within every virtue the seed of vice. The person who never confronts their darker impulses remains trapped in a childish state, believing themselves good merely because they have never been tested or tempted. The confrontation with the shadow is not an act of indulgence in evil, but an act of self-revelation. It is the understanding that you are not immune to betrayal, cruelty, or selfishness, that under the right circumstances you could do terrible things. It is the understanding that your potential for harm is just as real as your potential for healing. Without this knowledge, a person's morality remains superficial, fragile, and hypocritical. It is only through acknowledging the fullness of one's own nature that one can begin to act with true integrity and humility. The one who has faced their shadow is far less likely to be unconsciously controlled by it. They know the temptations that lie within. They have wrestled with them, and they have chosen, consciously and with full awareness, to pursue the good. This confrontation is not comfortable. It shatters illusions about the self. It forces a person to reckon with their own limitations, their own failures, their own hidden ambitions for dominance, revenge, or validation. It destroys the fantasy that one is purely virtuous or inherently superior. It tears apart the protective narratives the ego builds to shield itself from the terror of its own contradictions. But it is precisely in this shattering that growth becomes possible. For the intelligent person, recognizing their shadow becomes the gateway to authenticity. They no longer live in false innocence or naive optimism. They live in a state of radical honesty. They are dangerous, not because they choose to harm, but because they have become aware of their capacity to harm and have chosen to wield that power responsibly. Without this confrontation, intelligence collapses into arrogance or cowardice. A person who believes themselves wholly good becomes judgmental, self-righteous, and brittle. They cannot understand the complexities of human behavior because they deny the complexities within themselves. They cannot forgive others because they have never truly understood their own sins. They cannot create anything profound because their understanding of reality remains shallow. It is only by going down into the depths of the self, wrestling with the monsters that lurk there, that a person gains the wisdom, the empathy, and the resilience required to become truly great. To be intelligent is to bear the unbearable truth about one's self and to forge from that truth a new kind of strength, one that is not dependent on illusions, but rooted in the raw, unvarnished reality of the human condition. Moral development is not a clean, linear path. It is a process marked by struggles, contradictions, and painful growth. In order for a person to develop into someone who possesses true moral integrity, they must first come face to face with their own capacity for moral failure. This is an essential part of becoming truly wise. A person who has never stumbled, never made a mistake, or never fallen from grace lacks the critical self-awareness necessary to understand the complexity of human morality. They are naive at best, blind at worst. It is only through personal failure, through the experience of being less than ideal, that a person can cultivate the humility and empathy that marks genuine maturity. When we experience moral failure, we are forced to confront the reality that we are not perfect and we are not immune to the darker impulses of the human soul. Perhaps we deceive others for our own gain, abandon our principles to take the easier path, or fail to act when moral courage is required. It is this moment of failure, where we fall short of our own expectations and the expectations of others, that we learn the most important lessons about what it means to be truly moral. These experiences shape the soul. They teach us that being good is not about innate purity. It is about making choices in the face of temptation, recognizing when we are wrong, and, most crucially, the willingness to correct our mistakes. Those who never experience moral failure are often the ones who lack depth in their understanding of ethics. Their sense of right and wrong is abstract and theoretical, not rooted in lived experience. They may point fingers at others who have stumbled, not understanding that their lack of direct engagement with moral complexity is what makes their judgments shallow. True morality is not about perfection. It is about navigating the murky waters of human choice, acknowledging that we are capable of harm as well as good, and striving to be better despite our failings. A person who has faced their own moral shortcomings is better equipped to extend grace to others, because they understand that no one is immune to moral failure. They know firsthand the struggle of reconciling the ideal self with the flawed reality. A major component of moral development through failure is the ability to reflect and learn from these mistakes. It is not enough to simply acknowledge one's wrongdoings. To genuinely learn from them, a person must undergo a deep internal process of self-examination. What led them to act against their better judgment? What impulses drove them to betray their own principles? What emotional or psychological wounds triggered their moral lapses? Without this level of introspection, the failure remains merely a scar rather than a transformative experience. Moral failure, when coupled with genuine reflection, becomes the ground for personal growth. This process of self-examination is not about guilt or self-punishment, but about understanding oneself more fully and developing a more profound sense of moral clarity. True wisdom arises from the willingness to confront and accept the reality of one's own flaws. It is through failure that we learn the depth of our human condition, the complexity of our decisions, and the necessity of personal accountability. This is why the path to greatness is not about avoiding mistakes, but about learning from them. In doing so, we develop a resilience that makes us less likely to repeat the same errors, a deeper compassion for those who struggle, and a greater appreciation for the nuanced, multifaceted nature of morality itself. Without this foundation, a person's moral compass would be fragile and easily swayed by circumstances. It is only through the experience of moral failure, followed by thoughtful reflection and growth, that we develop the resilience and integrity necessary to act with genuine virtue. Creation, whether it is in the form of art, invention, or innovation, is not born from order and stability. It arises from chaos, the chaotic forces within the self, within society, and within the universe itself. The impulse to create is not born from calm or quiet certainty, but from the disruptive forces that stir up the known world and challenge the very foundations upon which it rests. True greatness in any field of human endeavor demands a willingness to embrace disorder, uncertainty, and disruption. To create something truly new and impactful, you must first be willing to dismantle what already exists, question the status quo, and venture into the unknown. This is where the truly intelligent minds operate, for they understand that the process of creation is as much about destruction as it is about building. It is about tearing down the old structures, the limiting beliefs, and the outdated ways of thinking in order to make space for something greater. This chaos is often misunderstood and feared. People prefer the security of familiar structures, routines, and systems. They resist the unfamiliar, the unpredictable, and the unknown. However, intelligent people understand that to create and innovate, one must first surrender to chaos. They must be willing to confront uncertainty without the comfort of guaranteed outcomes. Greatness cannot be achieved within the confines of what is safe or comfortable. It requires stepping outside the lines, breaking free from prescribed norms, and engaging with the unknown. It is precisely within this space of uncertainty that true innovation takes place. The ability to embrace chaos and use it as a force for good requires immense courage. Most people find comfort in predictability, in systems they know well, and in outcomes that are guaranteed. The intelligent person, however, recognizes that without stepping into chaos, without facing the unknown, there is no opportunity for transformation. This willingness to disrupt existing systems, to challenge conventional thinking, and to venture into the uncharted territories of knowledge and creation is what separates the truly great from the mediocre. It is not a reckless disregard for stability, but an understanding that progress and growth are impossible without shaking up the old, tested ways of doing things. It is through this process of chaos and disruption that new possibilities are born. Innovation arises when people are willing to tear down what is familiar in order to build something radically different. But it is not just the external world that must be confronted. It is also the internal chaos within each individual. The truly intelligent person does not shy away from the internal disarray of thoughts, emotions, and impulses. They accept that the process of creation and self-development is messy, difficult, and at times disorienting. It is through this internal chaos, through the questioning of one's own beliefs, assumptions, and values, that a deeper understanding of self and the world emerges. When we embrace chaos, we stop viewing failure and confusion as obstacles. Instead, we see them as integral parts of the creative process. Intelligent people do not fear failure. They recognize it as a necessary step in the journey of creation. The failed attempts, the missteps, the unexpected detours, all of these are not signs of weakness or incompetence, but are instead the raw material from which greatness is forged. Each mistake, each piece of chaos, is a stepping stone towards something greater, a moment of learning that sharpens the mind and refines the work. The people who create the most revolutionary ideas, the most profound works of art, or the most transformative technologies, are not those who seek comfort in the known. They are those who see potential in the disorder, who find clarity in the midst of confusion, and who are not afraid to break apart the existing systems and paradigms in order to make way for the new. They understand that greatness is not a smooth path, but a tumultuous journey through uncertainty. It is in this journey, through chaos and disruption, that the seeds of creativity and innovation take root, grow, and ultimately flourish. Strength of character is not something that can be built by suppressing the darker aspects of one's nature. Many people attempt to create an ideal version of themselves by pushing down and ignoring their impulses, desires, and emotions that they deem negative. This, however, leads to fragility. A person who denies the existence of their darker instincts may appear outwardly virtuous, but inwardly they are weak and vulnerable to their own subconscious urges. True strength comes from integration, the process of acknowledging and accepting every part of oneself, including those aspects we consider undesirable, aggressive, or destructive. To be truly strong, one must accept that the darker parts of the self are not inherently bad. They are simply parts of the human experience that, if ignored or suppressed, can wreak havoc in subtle ways. True strength is about coming to terms with these aspects and learning how to wield them in a disciplined and constructive manner. When we suppress these darker impulses, they do not disappear. Instead, they fester in the unconscious, quietly influencing our actions in ways that we are unaware of. They manifest as subtle self-sabotage, passive-aggressive behavior, or a constant low-grade sense of dissatisfaction. By contrast, when we confront these aspects head-on, we come to understand them. We learn where they come from, and we learn how to control them. Rather than being at the mercy of our unconscious drives, we become the masters of our own behavior. The integration of these darker aspects makes us more resilient, more grounded, and more capable of navigating the complexities of the human condition. This process is not about indulging in negative behaviors, but about accepting their existence and learning how to direct them in ways that do not harm ourselves or others. Strength, therefore, is not the absence of these darker elements, but the ability to incorporate them into a whole, balanced self. The person who has integrated their shadow, who has accepted that they are capable of harm as well as good, is someone who can act with full awareness and intention. They do not act out of unconscious impulses or unresolved emotions. Instead, they act with the awareness that they are capable of making choices that reflect their highest ideals, even when the temptation to act on negative impulses is strong. This requires tremendous discipline, but it also makes the individual much stronger, as they are no longer governed by forces outside their control. This integration is what separates the person who merely appears virtuous from the person who is truly virtuous. The former may act in ways that seem good on the surface, but their goodness is fragile and easily shattered by the slightest provocation. The latter, however, has earned their goodness through struggle, self-awareness, and integration. They know their own weaknesses, and they have developed the strength to overcome them. They are not perfect, but they are deeply self-aware, which makes them far more reliable, stable, and capable of handling the complexities of life. This inner strength is not a static trait. It is dynamic, continually evolving as the person continues to confront and integrate different aspects of their psyche. The more deeply a person understands themselves, the more resilient and adaptable they become in the face of life's challenges. In contrast, the person who represses their darker aspects is like a house built on a shaky foundation. It may stand for a time, but it is easily undermined by external pressures or internal crises. A person who has integrated their shadow, on the other hand, has built their foundation on a deeper understanding of themselves and their place in the world. They are not swayed by fleeting emotions, social expectations, or superficial ideals. They are grounded in the reality of their own humanity, and it is this groundedness that gives them the strength to endure hardship, make difficult choices, and maintain their integrity when the world around them is falling apart. Ultimately, strength of character is not about denying or avoiding the negative aspects of human nature. It is about embracing them, understanding them, and learning how to transform them into a force for good. Those who do so not only develop the strength to face the challenges of life, but also gain the wisdom to lead others through their own struggles, as they have already navigated the darkness within themselves. In the pursuit of mastery, whether it be intellectual, artistic, or practical, there is an essential truth. No one begins as an expert. The journey to competence and greatness is not a smooth, upward trajectory. It is a path marked by setbacks, mistakes, and perhaps most importantly, the willingness to look foolish in the early stages. The intelligent person understands that to learn something truly valuable, they must first risk looking incompetent. This is a humbling process, but it is also one of the most important aspects of growth. The person who fears looking foolish will never take the necessary steps to learn something new or challenge themselves. They will remain within the confines of what is already known, safe, and familiar, never venturing into the vast terrain of potential that lies just beyond their comfort zone. The fear of appearing incompetent or inexperienced is a natural and deeply human fear. It is tied to our self-image, to how we believe others perceive us, and to our need for validation and approval. However, in order to achieve greatness, we must overcome this fear. Intelligence is not about knowing everything or always appearing to have the answers. It is about the courage to step into the unknown, to try something new, and to fail publicly and repeatedly until mastery is achieved. The intelligent person understands that failure is not a sign of weakness. It is a necessary step in the process of learning. Without the willingness to be a fool, to make mistakes and learn from them, true growth cannot take place. This willingness to risk appearing foolish is also tied to the capacity for humility. Humility is not the denial of one's abilities, but the recognition that no matter how much we know, there is always more to learn. The person who is truly humble is not afraid to admit when they do not know something, and they are open to learning from others, whether those others are experts, novices, or even those who have failed before them. Humility is the key to ongoing growth because it allows for continuous learning. If a person believes they know everything, or worse, if they refuse to acknowledge what they do not know, they have already stagnated. True learning requires the willingness to be a beginner, to not yet have all the answers, and to trust that over time the pieces will come together through sustained effort and perseverance. Another aspect of this is the understanding that intelligence is not static. It is not a fixed trait that one either has or does not have. It is dynamic, evolving, and shaped by experience. To grow in intelligence, one must be willing to take risks, make mistakes, and be open to correction. The person who is always trying to appear competent, who is always hiding their ignorance behind a facade of knowledge, will miss out on the opportunities for genuine learning and growth. It is in the moments of failure, of appearing foolish, that the real lessons are learned. These moments are where the raw material of understanding is forged, where mistakes become stepping stones to deeper insight. Learning is also a process of refining one's skills and ideas over time. No one starts as an expert. Everyone starts as a beginner, but those who achieve greatness are those who are willing to endure the discomfort of being bad at something for a time. They understand that competence takes time, and they embrace the early stages of the process as a necessary part of their journey. In the beginning, everything feels clumsy, uncertain, and difficult, but it is through this discomfort that mastery is born. The intelligent person knows that they must first walk through the valley of incompetence before they can stand on the mountaintop of expertise. They do not shy away from the difficulty, but lean into it, understanding that it is not a sign of failure, but an integral part of their evolution. The key to intelligence and greatness, therefore, is the ability to embrace the process of learning itself, its messiness, its discomfort, and its uncertainty. It is about becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable. This means being willing to fail, to look foolish, and to make mistakes, knowing that each of these experiences is a valuable teacher. The person who avoids these experiences, who hides from failure in an attempt to preserve their image of competence, will never reach their full potential. True learning requires vulnerability and the courage to risk being less than perfect. The intelligent person sees this not as a weakness, but as an essential component of their journey toward greatness. True greatness requires not only the development of one's intellectual capabilities or the refinement of skill, but also the willingness to endure suffering and hardship. In a world that often promotes comfort, convenience, and immediate gratification, the idea of embracing suffering can seem counterintuitive, even unnecessary. Yet it is precisely through overcoming adversity that one becomes stronger, more resilient, and ultimately more capable of achieving greatness. To achieve anything of significance in life, to develop into a person of profound intelligence and character, one must be willing to face the inevitable challenges, struggles, and hardships that come with the pursuit of a higher purpose. Suffering is a natural part of life, and while most people seek to avoid it at all costs, those who pursue greatness understand its transformative power. The intelligent person is aware that hardship is not a random, meaningless experience, but an opportunity for growth. Pain, struggle, and suffering force us to confront our weaknesses, our limitations, and our fears. They strip us of our comfort zones and push us to the limits of what we believe is possible. This is where true growth occurs, not in the moments of ease or contentment, but in the trials that test our resilience, our determination, and our character. When we face difficulty, we are confronted with our deepest vulnerabilities. Our sense of self-worth, our confidence, and our understanding of our own abilities are all tested. In these moments, we are forced to either confront our limitations or accept them as insurmountable. The intelligent person recognizes that it is in these moments of crisis that the opportunity for true development lies. Last, instead of retreating or giving up, they push forward, not because they are invincible, but because they understand that overcoming adversity is the only way to become the person they aspire to be. This is not about masochism or seeking out pain for the sake of pain. Rather, it is about understanding that suffering is an inevitable part of the human experience. It is the natural consequence of living a life that matters, a life that is rich with meaning and purpose. Every significant achievement comes with its share of difficulties, setbacks, and obstacles. The person who avoids these struggles in an attempt to live a life of ease and comfort will never know the depth of what they could achieve. Greatness is forged in the fire of adversity, and only by willingly stepping into that fire can one emerge stronger, wiser, and more capable of handling whatever life throws their way. Suffering teaches us empathy and compassion. The intelligent person understands that their own suffering is not unique. Everyone experiences hardship in some form, and it is through this shared experience of pain and struggle that we connect with others on a deeper level. Those who have suffered themselves are more likely to show compassion for others who are going through similar challenges. They are able to offer understanding and support because they have been where others are and know the value of resilience. Through their own hardship, they become better equipped to navigate the struggles of others, offering guidance, encouragement, and strength in times of need. The intelligent person also understands that suffering is not permanent. It is a phase, a period of time that will eventually pass, leaving behind a person who is stronger, more capable, and more wise than they were before. When faced with adversity, they do not allow themselves to be consumed by despair or hopelessness. They understand that life is a cycle of ups and downs, and the dark periods are followed by light. It is through the acceptance of suffering, rather than avoidance of it, that we learn how to endure and thrive in a world that is constantly changing. Ultimately, the willingness to face suffering and adversity head-on is what separates those who achieve greatness from those who fall short. It is not the absence of pain that defines the truly successful, but the ability to endure pain, to learn from it, and to rise above it. The path to greatness is not an easy one. It requires perseverance, patience, and an unyielding commitment to one's goals, even in the face of hardship. The intelligent person understands this and embraces the struggle, knowing that it is the very thing that will make them stronger, wiser, and more capable of achieving their highest potential. Greatness is not something that comes from adhering to the easy paths of life, nor is it achieved by playing by the rules set by others. It is born from the willingness to step into the unknown, to embrace the discomfort of failure, and to integrate the darker aspects of ourselves that most choose to ignore. True intelligence is not about knowing the answers. It is about having the courage to question, to disrupt, and to learn through the process of trial, error, and introspection. It is through the acceptance of our shadows and the willingness to suffer that we are forged into stronger, more capable individuals. If we are to become the best versions of ourselves, we must be willing to be bad first, to fail, to learn, and above all, to keep pushing forward, even when the path ahead seems unclear. The greatest minds and the most extraordinary achievements are birthed from these struggles, and it is through them that we unlock the full potential of our lives. Embrace the chaos, endure the suffering, and never shy away from the work that transforms you into the person you were meant to become.